In this video, we will talk about rendering. Once you have successfully created a 3D garment, you might want to share the results with others. One way of doing so is to create a render of the finished simulation. Rendering is the process of converting 3D garments into images. We can use renders for presentations, line sheets, fitting sessions, or merchandising. To start, we load our prepared file and open a snapshot. In order to produce a render, we go to the main toolbar and click the camera icon. The render window is displayed showing the many settings that we can use to adjust the render the way we want. We start by deciding what kind of render output we want to create. Defining the render output influences the way the render can be viewed. There are two options, image and turntable. An image is a simple picture of a simulated garment. A turntable is an interactive 3D viewing combination of a series of renders from different angles. A turntable is useful for showing different angles of a simulated 3D garment outside vStitcher. Note, if we want to export our simulation as a 3D object, we can also do so here. Looking at the 3D window, part of the render window, we can see a preview of the final output. The position of our garment in the 3D window will be the same as on our image or turntable. Therefore, it is important to have our garment in a centralized position, making sure it is not too far to an edge. Note, we can change the view here in the same way as we do in our normal 3D window. For example, we can use the Look At option. We can also use the preset and any custom views we have created previously. Let's assume we want to render an image. In the next step, we choose the render type we want to use. We deal with render types in another video. For now, let's choose normal render. We can include or exclude the avatar. We can choose the background we want to render. The background can be transparent, a solid color, or showing the environment of the normal 3D window. A transparent background, for example, can be helpful if we want to insert the render into another document. We can adjust the size of an image by changing the number of pixels or the print size in centimeters. Additionally, we can also adjust the image resolution. We can choose which 3D views are rendered. Note, the system automatically adds the views that we had used from the 3D Views menu. We can save and share these settings to reuse them for the same product group or to share them with colleagues. To do so, at the top of the window, at New Export Preset, we type in the name and save it. Now let's look at a different render output, the turntable. Within the turntable option, we can choose whether we want to create an HTML file or an animated GIF. The next group of settings is the same as for the image render. The main difference is deciding how detailed our turntable render should be. We can choose between simple, detailed, or custom. Simple, a turntable of 4 angled views of the garment. Detailed, a turntable of 7 angled views of the garment. And custom, an individually configured turntable. In a custom turntable, we can set the angles and the zooms. The angles are the angled views. The zoom determines how close we want to zoom into the garment. The higher the number, the closer the zoom. We'll leave the advanced settings for a later video. With all the render settings done, we click Render. A File Explorer window is displayed so we can name our output and decide where we want to save it. In this video, we've shown you how to render your garment as images and turntables. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to set camera views and angles in preparation for rendering. Let's start with this prepared garment and load a snapshot of the finished simulation. As we don't need to work in the 2D window, we can set our focus in the 3D window for now. Rendering an image of a 3D garment can be compared to taking photos in a physical studio. The same way a photographer chooses which angles of the photo should be taken, we also set angles and camera views for the render. We can select preset camera views from the 3D window toolbar. We can also edit and add custom camera views. On the right side, the camera views pane is now displayed. Note that the display depends on whether we are in normal or look at mode. We'll start with normal. We can save a custom view to reuse, ensuring that we have consistent views of the dress garment for all renders. There are two different methods of approaching this. The first method is by manually adjusting the camera position, camera rotation, and field of view. To save the customized view, we type a name in the text box at the top of the Camera Views pane and click Save. Another way to save the custom camera view is to adjust the perspective in the 3D window as required and then save the settings. This method can also be useful to create particular shots of the garment, for example, to show workmanship details. To do so, it is best to use the Look At mode. As we are done creating our custom camera views, we can now exit the Camera Views pane and start preparing our render output. In the Render window, we can use the preset and custom camera views. Notice that each selection is automatically updated in the preview. If we now click Render, all the activated camera views are rendered. In this video, you've learned how to set up camera views and angles in preparation for rendering. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In this video, we will start to go more in depth with the types of renders we can create. Rendering is the process of converting 3D garments into 2D images on the computer. We're going to start with the normal render. The output will look just like the garment does in the 3D workspace. Let's begin with the prepared garment and load a snapshot of the finished simulation. In order to render, we click on the camera icon on the main toolbar. In the Render window, we can now adjust the render type. As you can see, Normal Render, being the default setting, is already selected. With all of the render settings done, we can click Render. A File Explorer window is displayed so we can set where we want to save our render output. After a short time, a File Explorer window with the location of the render image will open. There, the images are available and we can see the results. In this video, you've learned how to create a normal render. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center.
In this video, we'll be showing you another render type you can create, the ray trace image. Ray trace rendering generates the highest quality output, converting our 3D garment into a photorealistic 2D image. Note that for ray trace rendering, you must be able to use one of the ray trace render engines, Blender, Modo, or V-Ray. First, we will show you how to In this video, we'll be showing you another render type you can create, the ray trace image. Ray trace rendering generates the highest quality output, converting our 3D garment into a photorealistic 2D image. Note that for ray trace rendering, you must be able to use one of the ray trace render engines, Blender, Modo, or V-Ray. First, we will show you how to select the ray trace render engine. In Preferences, we go to the Render section and click on the drop-down to make a selection. Note that the available settings change according to the render engine that is selected. If we want to render using Blender, we must ensure that we install Blender on our computer. You'll find a link to the installation for Blender version 2.83 in the lesson summary. Once the software is installed, we ensure that Blender is selected as the ray trace renderer within vStitcher Preferences. Ensure Local Blender is selected. In Blender Path, we click Browse. A File Explorer window is displayed, and we can navigate to the location of the Blender app. Select it and click Open. The Remote option, if selected, will render the garments in the cloud, which would produce the render output much faster. This is great if we're rendering a large file or are using high-quality settings for our renders. There are two options for the remote option. If you choose Render Street, you must have a Render Street account. If you don't have a Render Street account, you can visit their website to find out more about their subscription plans. Browser Render Cloud is a new cloud rendering service available within Lota and vStitcher as an optional extra. For more information, you can contact your browser representative. Note, if Blender is selected as the ray trace renderer, once you render a garment, Blender will render the garment in the background of your computer. You do not need to open or load the software before rendering. The next option is Modo. Similarly, you will require to install Modo on your computer and add the Modo path into vStitcher Preferences. You can find out more on how to render with Modo on our help site. The last option is V-Ray. For V-Ray, you do not have to install the software on your computer. To render locally, select Local V-Ray. Similarly, you have remote options for V-Ray, which utilizes Browseware Render Cloud. To find out more information about setting up the different ray trace render engines, you can visit our Help Center. For this lesson, let's use V-Ray Local. If you have access to the Browseware Render Cloud, then you can select the V-Ray Remote option. Let's begin with the prepared garment and load a snapshot of the finished simulation. To render, we click on the camera icon in the main toolbar. In the render window, we can now choose the render type. By clicking the drop-down, we can see the available render types. We select Ray Trace Render. When we choose Ray Trace Render, the render quality option is displayed. The higher the quality, the better the render, and the longer it takes to produce the render. The lower qualities generate a slightly grainy image. We recommend using them to test lighting or for general previewing. The higher qualities produce a smoother image but take longer time. Such output is best for final production. There are several settings and options available for the render, and we cover these in a separate video. For now, we'll assume all the render settings are good, and we can go ahead and click Render. A File Explorer window is displayed, so we can set the name of the render output and where we want to save it. After a short time, a File Explorer with the location of the rendered image opens. There the images are available and we can see the results. In this video, you've learned how to create a ray trace render. For more information, check out the Browser Help Center.
In this video, we're going through another type of render. This time, the schematic render. With this render type, we will be converting our 3D garments into black and white 2D images. It will look like a technical flat. That's why the schematic render output is often referenced as a stylized technical flat. The schematic render image can be used for tech packs to efficiently communicate design features. Let's begin with our prepared garment and load a snapshot of our finished simulation. In order to render, we click on the camera icon of the main toolbar. In the render window, we can now adjust the render type to schematic render. Let's also not forget to make sure our output type will be an image. Let's take out the avatar for this render type. Most technical sketches are also without a mannequin. Adjusting the DPI influences on the quality of the render output. The higher the DPI, the more details we see. With all the render settings done, we can click Render. A File Explorer window is displayed so we can set where we want to save our rendered output. After a short time, the images are available and we can see the results. In this video, you've learned how to create a schematic render. For more information, check out the Browser Help Center. In this tutorial, we show how to change and adapt the light settings in the 3D environment. This is one of the key preparations for rendering. Let's start with the prepared garment and load a snapshot of the finished simulation. Our focus is on the 3D environment now, so let's expand our 3D window. In the previous videos, we explained that rendering a 3D garment is similar to taking photos in a physical studio. Just like a photographer sets up the right lighting to reinforce the best features of the garment, we adjust the light environment of our 3D window to achieve the same effect. This also helps to enhance the realism on our render output. We can view the lighting options by right-clicking in the 3D window, then clicking Edit Lights. Note, we can also view the settings from the main menu. There are several different HDRI lighting environments we can choose from. Let's choose a different setting. If we're happy with our preset value, we don't need to do anything more. Note that when we choose another lighting setting, the preview image of the light environment is to the right of the dialog box, and that changes too. This cross-shaped preview image resembles the flat view of the 3D environment that is built up around the avatar. To adjust the light environment, we edit the exposure and rotate image settings as required. To help find an attractive light setting, it sometimes helps to look at pictures in online shops to see where the light is coming from. When we are happy with the changes, we click OK. We can also import our own light environments as HDRI files. Once we have added our file, it's available for selection, and we can do the same adjustments of our imported lighting as we did previously. To ensure that the light settings come out as wished, it is recommended to run a test render. To change and adjust your lighting environment after reviewing, go back and repeat the previous steps. In this video, you've learned about light settings in the 3D environment. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In the previous videos of this course, we went through all the rendering settings with you. In this video, we will demonstrate a workflow that you can use to save and share them. The benefit of saving the settings is so that you don't have to adjust them every time you want to render. Sharing these settings with your team is a great way to make sure all your renders have consistent quality. To start, we open our prepared file with colorways and load a snapshot. We will now configure all the render settings that can be saved for reuse and sharing. Let's start with the lighting setting. We want to render an image with ray trace, and we'll also adjust the print size of the image output. Colorways and views are not included when saving export presets. To save the settings, we now enter a name for them in the New Export Preset text field. After saving, we can export the preset. A File Explorer window is displayed so we can set where we want to save these settings. To demonstrate how we can import a setting, let's delete our settings from our render window. You can now see that this dropdown is empty. By clicking Import, we can look for our exported file on our computer. The adjusted values of the imported preset are now automatically taken over. You can create multiple settings and share them with other people or just save them for yourself. In this video, you've learned how to save and share rendered settings. For more information, check out the Browseware Help Center. In this video, we're going to demonstrate a workflow that can be used to render more than one view in colorway at a time. Let's start with a prepared garment file that contains multiple colorways and load the snapshot of the finished simulation. Often, garment styles are available in color variations, or as we call it in the fashion industry, colorways. Our dress comes in 4 different colors: It would be quite an effort to render all colorways one by one. Instead, we can render multiple colorways together. To do so, we go to the Render window. We want to create images using the normal render type and include the avatars. We adjust the size and the DPI of our image. In the Advanced settings, we can select or deselect options and save all render colorways to the same folder. With the Next setting, we can choose the colorways we want to render. Here, we check the box next to Select All Colorways. You can see that all images below representing a colorway are highlighted blue now. This means that all colorways will be rendered. To exclude a colorway from the selection, we can click the image of the one we want to remove. If we want to get a colorway back after removing it, we simply click on the image again. By selecting the 3D views, we can choose the perspectives in which we want our virtual garments to be rendered. This list consists of preset and customized 3D views. Each of these views will be rendered in all of the above selected colorways. This means for each view, one image per colorway will be rendered. If we now click Render, all the activated camera views will be rendered. In this video, you've learned how to render colorways. For more information on rendering, check out the Browseware Help Center.